Hello, today I am going to be showing you a quick tutorial on rigid bodies and how to set them up in Blender 2.8. Rigid bodies can be used to simulate the motion of solid objects. It affects the position and orientation of objects and does not deform them. So first thing I'm going to do is delete this cube, and we are going to create a UV sphere and a plane. So for our benefit, let's increase the size of the plane, and I am going to move the UV sphere above that. Alright, so now with the ball selected, over here in the properties panel, we are going to select the physics properties. And right here, we are going to select rigid body. Now, by simply doing that, we've turned the physics on, and there's a bunch of settings here, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to leave those alone for now. So now, if I hit play, we can see that gravity has started affecting the UV sphere, but it seems to just fall infinitely. So to fix this, what we need to do is we are going to apply rigid body on the plane. So with the plane selected, I'm going to select rigid body, and if I hit play right now, we can see that they're both falling. So to fix this, what we need to do is go over here, and underneath rigid body where it says type, we're going to select the active and we're going to make it passive. So by doing this, now when I hit play, the ball now interacts with the said object, and the plane does not infinitely keep falling. And we can adjust this even more if we move the sphere up and hit play. You can kind of see it rolling. So what we're going to do now is, if you want to further change the aspects of this ball, what we could do is, under surface response with the ball selected, we can select bounciness. And with it set to 0, the ball isn't very bouncy, but if we set it, let's say about 1, and we hit play, not much happened. But in order to fix that, we need to do the same to the plane. So let's increase the bounciness. Let's reset our timeline, and let's hit play now. And as you can see, the ball is super bouncy, but that probably wouldn't work for most objects like this. So we could probably dial it back just a tad. So if we set it now, we get a nice simple bounce where the gravity is affecting, and it's very believable now. There's a lot of many things that you can do with rigid bodies, and this is one of the most basic things you can set up. But as far as animating goes, there's a little more extra steps to that. So I'll get back to you on this, and I will open up a demo to show you more examples. Alright, so I have gone ahead and created this carnival game animation for this tutorial. Now I have already applied everything that I just showed you from the previous lesson. So if we hit play, the ball and the milk bottles interact with the scene, but clearly this isn't ideal. There is definitely something off. The idea is for the ball to knock over the milk bottles, and for that to happen, we have a few more extra steps. So first, let's identify one of the first problems is the milk bottles. with the animation playing, we can see that the milk bottles are interacting with the scene, but clearly they're supposed to be staying still. If we want further control over this, what we can do is manually animate them. And we can easily do that in the rigid body settings. So with one of the milk bottles selected, I'm going to go over here to settings under rigid body, and under dynamic, there is animated. Now, what this magic little checkbox allows us to do is to further control the animation of the rigid body, and we can keyframe the moment we actually want it to interact with the animation itself. So I am going to select the checkbox, make sure it's blue, and I'm going to do that for each of the milk bottles. So now if I hit play, the bottles aren't shaking whatsoever, and this is good. The next thing we need to cover is the ball itself. Now just going into the timeline, we can see gravity is still affecting it. Now the idea is we want this ball to fly through and knock over to the milk bottle. So first we need to do a little bit of animation. So first things first, if I want to animate and control this again, I go over to the rigid body settings and I select animated. So now the ball will freeze in place and it's just waiting for us to keyframe. So I'm going to make sure I am on frame 1, and I'm going to go over here to this side panel. If the side panel is not open here for you, you can click in on the keyboard as in Nancy to bring it open. And the first thing we're going to do is just look at this right here. We're going to hover the mouse over and we're going to hit I on the keyboard as an idea, and that is going to keyframe the movements of this ball. So now we just need to figure out where we want to launch the ball. Probably on the other side of the bottles. So let's skip ahead into the timeline. I'd say 13 frames is alright. So with the ball selected, I'm going to apply a movement. And probably around here is where I want it to stop. We can see that it changed colors, which is ideal. So we're going to hit I again, and we're going to keyframe everything. So now we can see that the ball is on mark to hit the bottles, but there's clearly some misinformation here. The ball is not interacting with it. Now, one step I left out, which is what I'm going to show you now, is the little animated checkbox here under rigid body. This little white dot here allows us to add a keyframe. So we can animate when this turns on and off, so we can have it at our ideal point in the animation interact with the scene. So with this being turned on frame 1, I'd say let's move it about here. And then we're going to turn the checkbox off, and then we're going to hit this little white box to keyframe. So now the ball is clearly having some fall off and interacting with the scene, and you can even see it in the background with it still highlighted, it rolling down. So now we need it to interact with the milk bottles. So using the same steps before, what I'm going to do is select one of the milk bottles, and I am going to click on this keyframe right here to add that to the timeline. So we need to figure out when the ball is going to impact with the milk bottle. So let's scoot ahead a couple frames. And this is probably the best spot. So right about there is where I will keyframe and turn that off. So now, if I hit play, we now have a milk bottle being tossed off the table by the ball. So now we just have to simply apply the exact same thing to the other milk bottles. And it's important to remember which keyframe this was all happening on, which would be frame 8. So let's scoot ahead to frame 8. I'm going to check that keyframe. And we are going to repeat the same thing for the last bottle. So now, when I hit play, we have an ideal animation of a ball knocking over milk bottles at a carnival. I hope this tutorial was insightful for you and hope that you can create other amazing things with rigid bodies in the future.